Ronald Reagan was, of course, a committed conservative who was known to have a slightly defective mind, who
and
had some pretty...
that was the case.
And proved it.
Three weeks after Reykjavik, reports from Beirut claimed the Reagan administration had approached Iran with an arms for hostage deal. Reagan denied it.
Could I suggest and appeal to all of you with regard to this, that the speculation, the comment, all on a story that came out of the Middle East and that was to have no foundation, that all of that is making it more difficult for us in our effort to get the other hostages free.
Days later, Reagan admitted arms had been shipped to Iran to forge a better relationship, but denied they were arms for hostages.
In spite of the wildly speculative and false stories about arms for hostages and alleged ransom payments, we did not, repeat, did not trade weapons or anything else for hostages, nor will we.
The American middle had been confounded by this patriotic president who had won on standing tall, who was found to be paying tribute to the enemy in a kind of a pusillanimous way.
Reagan had questions to answer.
And how would you assess the credibility of your own administration in the light of the full-on deception of Congress and the public in terms of your secret dealings with Iran, the disinformation?
The record shows that every time an American hostage was released, there had been a major shipment of arms just before that. Are we all to believe that was just a coincidence?
What would be wrong with saying that a mistake was made on a very high-risk gamble so that you can get on with the next 2 years?
Because I don't think a mistake was made.
Ronald Reagan doesn't see the world that you and I see. He sees a world through rose-colored glasses. It's a wonderful world, but it's not the real world that exists out there. And so he didn't want to see a world in which he had traded arms for hostages. That ran against his grain. That's not his world. Yet he did it.
Reagan is a classic model of a successful child of an alcoholic. He doesn't hear things and doesn't see things that he doesn't want to hear and see. And that's the thing you learn. You learn that as a child. And Reagan learned it.
Questions continued to nag Reagan, and there was conflicting testimony by others. Attorney General Ed Meese offered to investigate the matter over the weekend. Meese insisted on seeing Reagan on Monday.
About 5 minutes. He's got the Afghanistan freedom fighters coming in, but we'll give you 5 minutes. He said, okay, 5 minutes, that's all I need. So he came in and he said, Mr. President, I got some bad news for you. What's that? He said, there's been a probable diversion of funds from the arms sales to Iran, then diverted to the Contras in Nicaragua. The president said, I'll have to clean this up a little bit, or shoot, or words to that effect. The president actually turned white. He blanched, and he said, what could have been going through their minds? Why would they do this?
Reagan had asked that the Contras be held together, body and soul. They were, in a manner which stretched, if not violated, the law.
As I've stated previously, I believe our policy goals toward Iran were well-founded. However, the information brought to my attention yesterday convinced me that in one aspect, implementation of that policy was seriously flawed. And now I'm going to ask Attorney General Meese to brief you.
Did you still maintain you didn't make a mistake, Mr. President?
Hold it.
Did you make a mistake in sending arms to Tehran, sir?
No, and I'm not taking any more questions. In just a second, I'm going to ask Attorney General Meese to brief you on what we presently know of what
he has found out.
Anyone else going to be let go, sir?
Secretary Schultz.
No one was let go, they chose to go.
What about Secretary Schultz? What about Secretary Schultz, sir?
I give you the Attorney General.
And who's going to run down the security? I want to see what the flaw is.
That's what I'm going to say, what it's all about.
That so much of this can go on and the president not know it. He is the president of the United States. Why doesn't he know?
Because somebody didn't tell him, that's why.
Everybody else, very happy Thanksgiving Day.
Mr. President, who's going to head that commission investigating what happened?
Mr. President, what did you know about money going to the Contras?
All I know is this is just going to taste wonderful, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow. He's not looking forward.
I felt I was the one being roasted, Reagan would later quip.
Mr. President, how much trouble are you in because of this Contra revelation?
Did you know about the Contras?
When would you be able to speak out on this Contra business? Mr. President, you've never done tough questions before.
Mr. President, hasn't this damaged your presidency?
If he knew of the diversion of funds to the Contras, he would be in trouble. If he did not, he was not in control of his White House staff.
I obviously will need information and cooperation and help from the executive branch
What
of
do you
government.
know about the making available to the Nicaraguan resistance of proceeds from the arms sales?
On the advice of my attorneys, I must decline to answer that question at this time.
Hamilton, on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question based on my constitutional right.
Is there information in the possession of the Justice Department that suggests this thing started earlier?
There was no smoking gun here.
I think that's what everybody is concerned about here, who knew what and when.
The shadow of Watergate descended over the White House. This presidency is over, columnist Charles Krauthammer wrote.
It was the first time I'd really seen him with the wind completely out of his sails. One of his greatest assets was the trust of the public. And when it turned out that in fact there had been an arms for hostage deal, the public stopped believing.
That was the first time I got the feeling that he was not able to handle anything that came at him again. He wasn't quite up to handling a crisis of that dimension.
And I blew my top. I said, the hell with it. If that's the way they're going to leak about me and the like, I don't want to stay around anymore. I was so whizzed off at that point that I dashed off a very terse letter to the president. I hereby resign. He called me, very soft tones, that he didn't mean for this to happen. He wished it hadn't happened. I said, it's too late. I'm out of here.
No more pigs in our community. 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 No more pigs in our community.
Bobby Seale, the clarion call of the Black Panther Party was power to the people. And you spent certainly virtually all of your life trying to give people in the community more power and control over their lives. In the 30 years since you started the Panther Party, how much improvement have you seen in members of the black community's ability to take control over their own lives?
I got to put this in context. You know, when we came about, we were sort of in what we call the second phase of the civil rights struggle. It's a hindsight analysis. We were about not only the Black Panther Party sneaking its attempt into the South, trying to evolve political electoral black community unity. That was a time when there was only, 400 maybe or so duly elected black politicians. I mean, from the federal all the way down to the Board of Education level. What we see that came out of that 60s protest movement was at the end of the 70s, we're talking about 6,000 or 7,000 duly elected black politicians. At the end of the 80s, 10,000 duly elected politicians. The problem is that it was only half a victory because hypothetically 50% of the politicians ain't worth crap, even the black ones, right? Probably 70, 80% of the white ones are not worth crap either. My point is that was the second phase. The main thing, though, was how do we get to the economics? How do we evolve a new economic practice that makes some human sense? And that is the area, you see. Now, we can talk about and measure from the 60s with the Kerner report, when they spoke of what 2, 3, 4% blacks were of the educated property owner class, etc. And if we measure with the basic medium income and the levels of discriminations and lack of fair access, fair shares access to education, what have you, and jobs, at the time we made, well, there's been some changes. On the other end, we can look at Black America particularly, and we can see 25% of the African American community with less than $5,000 income a year.
Now, as I understand, I mean, the kind of the two foundations of the Black Panther Party was self-defense and self-reliance, self-help. But with the passage of time, I mean, so much of the Black Panthers have become just the self-defense side. The black berets, the clenched fists, the guns, and that we seem to have forgotten, or there hasn't been the same attention paid to the literacy programs, the breakfast programs, the self-help and the community programs. Why is that, you think?
That's because when we said that we would defend ourselves if we're attacked by any races, I mean, that captures everybody's imagination.
It's a little bit more exciting than breakfast in a bag, I guess.
We were reacting to the several years preceding that period, preceding October 1966 when we created the Black. We were reacting to all the brutality that had been launched on the peaceful demonstrators. Remember, Hewitt was in Knight Law School, and the constant reference, as Hewitt used to say, every time they jump on the peaceful demonstrators, they're violating the First Amendment of the Constitution because it clearly states that all of them have a right to peacefully redress and peacefully assemble, and they only peacefully assemble. Now Bull Corner and the racists are jumping on them, therefore they're violating their constitutional rights, they're violating the law of the land. This was Huey Newton. So when we came along looking at this for several years, we started, he says, oh, we're gonna stand for self-defense. If you attack us, we'll shoot back. But we did it by law. We were so damn legal when we went out to patrol the police and observe the police with the legal guns. We knew all the laws on that. It blew the cops' mind. The fact that we knew all our civil rights laws. And
the fact, I guess, carrying an unconcealed weapon was completely lawful.
Loaded, unconcealed. Remember, I was in the military, so the youth was trained. I had Albert Howard, big man Albert Howard. He helped me because he was in the military, so we were training them with the weapons. All these particulars we trained them before we went to the patrol. It blows the cops' minds that Huey could articulate these points of law. He could pull out some Supreme Court ruling particular related to the such and such amendment, this is due process law in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, therefore you cannot touch my private property, therefore move back, do not, and the black people in the community saying, damn, what kind of mess is this? They never seen it. So their imagination was being captured. Little did we realize the policeman's imagination was being captured. Little did we realize the whole nation's imagination was being captured. Little did we realize when I took the delegation to Sacramento, armed delegation in the California State Legislature, when they're trying to make this law against us carrying loaded weapons in city limits, it captured the imagination of the whole world. We didn't know this was going to happen.
Did it capture, though, to the detriment of the other good work the Panthers were doing in the community?
What happens is that this was only in a 6-month period. We hadn't even got to the Breakfast Children program didn't start till '68. The health clinics.
Oh, really?
That's the point.
So all the focus on the Sacramento march.
Right. We were a ragtag little group. Before Huey went to jail, there was never any more than 75 people who had been through the party. When I went to California State Legislature, I had 24 males and 6 females, and maybe 5 or 6 other party members who had jobs they had to go to. This is what we had in the first 6 months. But we got this international notoriety. We were like a social evolutionary accident in the middle of an ongoing civil human rights protest that was already there. And we put civil rights right on the cutting edge, civil human rights protests right on the cutting edge. And so we got that notoriety for that before the preventative medical health care clinics, before sickle cell anemia checks, free breakfast programs, free food programs, senior citizen safe programs, taking the senior citizens back and forth so they wouldn't be mugged and stuff. Before these programs. And then later we ran, in late '68, we ran for political office. I ran on the ballot. Kathleen Cleaver was named on the ballot, Eldridge Cleaver, and we put Huey Newton's name on the ballot while he was sitting in jail. Later in 1972, after myself being a political prisoner in jail without bail for 2 years, I won the cases. And I ran for political office again as the mayor of Oakland, but we didn't make it. But by the time I got ready to run for mayor of Oakland, the Central Committee voted that I was going to do so in January of '72. There were no more physical attacks on our offices. 28 was already dead. We won 95% of all the courtroom cases that we've been in because we have one of the most profound legal teams. Give that credit to Huey because Huey was in that vein of thinking of understanding the whole legal ramifications.
Another image that I think a lot of people still have of the Panthers is with those little red books, the Chairman Mao books.
That's interesting. Because a lot of times, like, people are writing that this was the ideological base of the Black Panther Party. Not true.
Yeah, see, I was wondering, that's my question, is how important was ideology to the Panthers?
Well, ideology originally from the Black Panther Party grew out of us understanding African and African American people's history of struggle for that. I mean, I was chock full of information from '64 to '66. I'm saying that by the time we ran into this red book, it was just a thing. Right after we had escorted Sister Betty Shabazz, we might have been 4 or 5 months old. He would say, "Hey man, how much money you got?" And remember, we're still a ragtag organization. I don't know, $70, $80, man. Come over, I know how we can raise some money to pay rent and buy some more shotguns. Next thing I know, in my car, Hugh didn't have a car. We were headed to the China bookstore in San Francisco, some obscure location. We get over there and they said, you can buy these red books for 25 cents individually. If you buy them in a pack, you buy them for 20 cents. I said, we'll buy 2 packs. So we bought 50 red books. We went back up to Save This Gate in University of California. We hadn't even read these things. We knew they were popular in the media because the media would show millions of people holding up Chairman Mao's red book in China. So here we are, 5 or 6 of us, get your red book, $1, and they were going like hotcakes.
To white liberal college students.
Get your red book, $1. We have not read this thing. We run back to the China bookstore and buy these guys out, man. We buy 200, 300 books and sell them out. We run book, buy some shotguns, pay some utilities and some rent. The next day we're doing the same thing. Finally, we heard about a big anti-war rally 3 weeks later at Kezar Stadium in San Francisco. I mean, they must have, what, 25,000 people in this anti-war rally. We left the guns at home. We went in there with a couple of thousand red books. We still have not read this book. We go in there and sell red books for $1. Then, I guess a little bit after Denzel Dow's situation in North Richmond when he got killed by a policeman, Huey and I happened to be sitting in my house and said, hey man, there's some nice stuff in here. Look, you cannot steal not a needle and a piece of thread from the people. We got to reading this thing. So we adopted these little aspects out of the Red Book, and I made little rules out of them, not necessarily per se the Red Book. But the Red Book is a form of required reading for the Black Panther Party members. I never implemented that till my organization started growing like wildfire. It says, everybody got to read the Red Book. That was in 1968. After Martin Luther King was killed. See, because after Martin Luther King was killed,
that's when
that our organization swelled from 400 members to 5,000 members in a matter of 6 months. Grew almost too fast, but I kept up with it. But that's when the Red Book became part of a lot of required reading. Because prior to that, You had to read W.B. Du Bois's Black Reconstruction, Basil Davidson, even Blues People, the autobiography of Malcolm X. I had a list of about 25, 30 books one had to read that had largely to do with African-American people's history of struggle. W.B. Du Bois gave us this very rather class analysis of what the situation was as it related to the color line and as the color line related to the class analysis, but coming from really an African-American perspective. So the real ideological approach evolved out of that. Red book and stuff was secondary. Then, of course, in 1968, we got a handful of Marxist-Leninists come in the party. Then they clashed with me a bit because some of them are trying to argue the Soviet Union state-controlled command economy socialism. I says, bull crap, I don't like it. What do you mean? I says, if you're going to argue dialectics, over here you have the avaricious, racist, corporate monopoly capitalists. You're saying that the antithesis to this is Russia's Politburo, state-controlled command economy socialism. What about us, the people, can be in control? This is about power to the people. Our slogan is all power to all the people. So later for some Politburo, later for some corporate money rich, we need to get down here, and this is the true synthesis. That was my argument in the late 60s.
So the rank and file Panthers weren't ideological, they weren't?
Yes, they were. They were very ideological. They were ideological, but I was the key in central political education.
Well, your 10-point program, I know, was instilled.
That was it, but it was beyond that. We went beyond that 10-point program. In many cases, you had party members trying to read the four works of Mao Zedong, reading Che Guevara. But what I would do was show the party members that they don't necessarily apply in an overdeveloped, fast-paced, high-tech social order. That we're living in a different situation. So you're not living in the rural, you're not living in the woods and the hills, you're living in the urban. So I was high-tech anyway, you know, Gemini missile program way before, and architect, United States Air Force, high-tech. So I understood that relationship. I related more, even when after I studied my African history, I related more to the mineral resources in the bowels of the earth of Africa rather than whether or not I'd wear a dashiki. See, so the aesthetic was secondary.
Right.
And I'm dealing with the need, how do black people control more of the mineral resources in the bowels of the earth so they can have a decent standard of living and more community control of the political, economic, and social justice institutions that affect their lives.
Now, with the passage of time, it's become absolutely crystal clear that, in fact, the FBI did have a program of undermining the activities of the Panther Party. And in fact, I think the Senate Select Committee on Government Intelligence Activities in '76 said the FBI engaged in lawless tactics against Black Panther Party and responded to deep-seated societal problems by fomenting violence and unrest. I mean, pretty tough indictment of a central agent of government. Yet it's interesting, I've read in your works that you don't believe that it was the FBI and only the FBI that was responsible for the demise of the Panther movement.
What I call the final demise is the difference. I'm not going to take the FBI off the hook. They've violated our constitutional rights. I think Wesley Swearingen, with his recent book, FBI Secrets, Southern Press published, exemplifies that. He's an FBI agent who's revealing real murder tactics, particularly John Huggins and others. Now, the FBI violated our rights. They fermented that split between Eldridge Cleaver and Huey Newton, all of that. Now, let's get into the fall of '73. Elaine Brown is running around telling little lies on people so she can get close to Huey. I think somebody said this about you, Chairman, a servant, and they disrespecting you. And one day, Huey, beginning to snort cocaine, abusing that,
Since around
jumped
73?
on a rank-and-file party member and beat the hell out of him. A whole herd of 100 and some odd party members just left. Who the hell he think he is? And people were peppering off because of this kind of crap. I'm jamming you. We put you in the hospital twice behind abusing those drugs. We had Dr. Small. I mean, we actually put him in the hospital. I'm not trying to take away Huey's early contribution. I'm telling the truth of what happened. People need to know the whole truth. If you only have a half a truth, it's the biggest lie in the world. This is what happened in the real demise in late '73 and early '74. In May of 1974, I discovered Huey Newton is trying to take over the drug trade. We've bundled down to 250.
It's in Oakland now.
Oakland, San Francisco, Oakland. That's the only branch and chapter operation going, except for a skeleton crew with a free ambulance program in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. There's no Chicago. All the chapters have been broken down. They don't exist anymore behind that Mayoralty campaign. So now you see the real demise that's beyond COINTELPRO. unless Huey Newton and Elaine Brown was working for COINTELPRO. See, so this is the trouble with so many party members. They're hurt, some of them, to this day. Most of them are not, because a lot of them are PhDs and master's degree people now. But my point is, this is the true demise. Now, there's 250 so people left. I'm trying to figure out what I do with Huey. Do I kill him? That's not me.
This is Huey Newton, you mean?
Yes, in May and June into July of 1974. I can't kill Huey. I'm not a murderer. I had organized 5,000 people while he's sitting in jail. I confronted him with this. I says, I resign. You need to resign. The Black Panther Party is over. Oh, I'm doped up. I'm trying to keep that. I says, you're not keeping anything together, Huey. You never kept anything together. You don't even know these party members. I'm the one that politically educated them. I'm the one that taught them demographics and how to set up programs, etc. I'm the one that spurred them. I'm the one that broke down quantitative increase and dialectics to them. You didn't do it. The party is over. I'm going to resign. I want you to resign. The party's over. I walks out. Get out of my house. You ain't nothing but a punk. I says, one thing I'm not, Huey. You know I'm no punk. So I'm 6 years older than Huey. He knows that if you do me wrong, I will hurt you. I walk out. Next thing you know, I decide I'm going to leave. And when I leave, I'm willing to bet. I'm not going to even let those 250 party members know I left. But when they find out I'm gone, they're going to walk off. And sure in hell, 4 weeks later, Elaine Brown jumps up in a meeting and says, Bobby Seale has defected from the Black Panther Party. Guess what happened? 75% of more than 200 people in the auditorium say, the chairman's gone. I'm out of here. And they roll.
Now, some have noted, looking at what's happened to not so much the black community, but inner city problems with cuts in the whole kind of fiscal climate in North America, that the time is right for the emergence of new activist groups, much like the Panthers were in the 60s, today in the 90s. Do you see a lot of the conditions that caused the Panthers to emerge being replicated today?
It's very different. In the middle 1950s, we're talking only 400 duly elected politicians. You have over 10,000 now.
Mm-hmm.
Really, largely, when you talk about pushing, and even though it's not really the final revolutionary struggle, that's already been done. You don't need any guns. I wouldn't even emphasize guns.
That's interesting. I was going to ask.
They need to network. Every inter-community area need to network 1,000 video cams. There were no video cams in my day.
Right.
So we had law books and tape recorders and shotguns.
So the video cam that got
Remember,
Rodney
all we
King.
had was a tape recorder. But we had to have that shotgun because they would jump on you, shoot you, brutalize you, and murder you. Now, if we can network from the windows and the blocks of the people like a town watch watching police barracks, we're not going to stop them from arresting the criminals in the community. You can't do that because you got too much criminal, dumb behavior that had nothing to do with any ideology of politics, of liberation. It really has nothing to do with it. It's just a bunch of, I'm just saying, so what is a new organization supposed to be about? The first phase was trying to wipe the laws of segregation off the books with Martin Luther King, Thurgood Marshall, Rosa Parks. They evolved and moved into wipe 8. So 15, 16 years later, 90 and 95% of the written laws of segregation was wiped off the books from the 50s to the early 70s. The second phase was Bobby Seale, Kwame Ture, the Black Panther Party, SNCC, Rap Brown, and even OAAU with Malcolm X, when he finally got away from the Nation of Islam, created this secular kind of OAAU organization. That was all about trying to evolve that grassroots political electoral community power to get more participation in the system, right? The third phase is about economic liberation, and it still exists to this day. So whatever organization comes about, we got to get beyond names, and the content must be about higher education and economic liberation. Inclusive in that higher education is not only African and African American people's studies, it's Native American people's studies, it's all ethnic group studies, it's understanding humanity, and also realizing that we're getting ready. This is an information-based economy now. We're not dealing with an industrial age anymore. We were coming out of, while the 60s was part of the peaking out of the industrial age over 300 years. Now we've evolved to this new information-based economy. We're talking about the 90s and moving into the year 2000. So for every little group to jump, we're the new Black Panthers, I'm asking, what is your ideology? Is it about education and economic liberation or not? And if it's not, I have no time for it.
What's your take on a lot of the interracial problems that are happening in minority communities in America right now? Black on Korean problems, black on Asian problems.
It's because most of that is generated by varying degrees of what I call xenophobic nationalism or naive black nationalism. These nationalist groups speak in terms of separation, et cetera and so on, and they're coming from an old ideological approach. The problem with that is that they forget that this world is too interconnected and too interrelated. What they don't understand is black unity has to be about helping to humanize the world. I think that Nelson Mandela represents a profound example.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, remember 2 or 3 years ago, Brother Khalid Muhammad, now don't get me wrong, I understand Khalid Muhammad's growing up disenfranchisement and the racism, beating him on his head, and probably the police done brutalized him and killed, you know what I mean? And so he jumped up 2 or 3 years ago, and when Nelson Mandela and them took over, they need to kill all the white folks, and if there's an old white man in a wheelchair, you need to push him off a cliff. Now, what is that? That's stooping to the same level of a Hitler-type racist Ku Klux Klan. And a lot of times these guys emotionally feel that this is justified because it was done to black folks.
Mm-hmm.
But that is not the goal objective of the struggle. This is where the right-wing racists on the other end are able to use that to justify a perpetuation of the exploitation, murder, and brutality of people of color. The true goal objective is where Nelson Mandela is coming from. To get control of the political, economic, and social justice institutions, it's going to take him a few years to get greater control of the security forces there and the real political procedure to a point where when he says we're going to have a non-racist society and a non-sexist society, to have a non-sexist society is to focus in on what human liberation is about. That is the goal objective. In other words, black unity only for a catalyst to help humanize the world.
What kind of tactics do you think are going to be necessary to gain that economic, social, and political control? What activists out there are doing things that impressed you today?
I love the way, was it Greenpeace or Green Party and the groups on the internet signed this petition against the French government for its renewal of nuclear testing.
Yeah.
How can we get more creative with that as form part of the tactic? We have to understand that we can get across border lines, we can communicate. I mean, people are going to have to create tactics that will be going to, where you're arguing some civil human rights issue, you're going to have to show its interconnection with how the environment is being described.
Mm-hmm. What about the Louis Farrakhan's and the other black leaders who've come to prominence in the last?
Well, you know, Louis Farrakhan is a reverend, a preacher, whatever, you know, he's sort of a messiah type guy, you know, but I have to give him credit for more recently in terms of organizing tactics. The African American Economic Development Council, to me, was the most important thing he said. It represented coalition, political, community organized. He has to work with 25 other black organizations totally outside of the Nation of Islam with the African American Economic Development Council. You see what I'm getting at? So, depending on if that goes positive, that's the most important thing he said in that whole speech. You know, my point is, it's probably a growth level for him. He had to stop castigating Jewish people based on an old 2,000-year-old religious war that's been going on in the Middle East. You know what I mean? I'm tired of it. And if we get beyond him, I think Jesse Jackson's speech was very significant at that Million Man March. People need to listen to that. You know, what he was talking about. You know, next time there's a march, we need to have a 5 million people march. Men, women, black, white, blue, red, green, yellow, and polka dot. That's the next march that need to come down.
And what lies ahead for Bobby Seale?
Bobby Seale, well, I'll probably produce this film, Seize the Time, with the real authentic high drama of the Black Panther Party. Black Panther Party's history on the big screen. Out of that, we hope to raise some money to create the Environmental Renovation Youth Jobs Project, particularly in Philadelphia is the first example, then maybe to Detroit and some other cities. idea is you got to raise that $10 million. I'll take the cookbook, Barbecuing with Bobby, put it on CD-ROM now, add some more recipes, a new edition on CD-ROM, and help market that. And up to 50% of those funds will help go to the Environmental Renovation Youth Job Program project. Actually,
this is where you're encouraging kids to renovate cars. And
no, we're structuring it in such a way, under reach, but the Environmental Renovation Youth Project will also be a nonprofit entity where we, former party members, the handful I'm working with, we're actually hiring professional supervisors, professional carpenters, builders, drywallers, electricians, roofers, etc. They'd be paid union scale with all the retirement and stuff. But they'll have anywhere from 3 to 6 youth that they'll be teaching to do this actual work. And we'll be able to pay those youth $7.50, $8.50 an hour, renovating old houses and renovating old cars, and also step by step involving electrical automobile technology, alternative energy frameworks for the renovated housing. You see them getting it, putting it back on the market, the money is paid back to the, make these real jobs, and then teach human resources skills. They work 40 hours a week, 5 hours as human resources skills. You sit on a computer and you're gonna have to learn how, and we will teach you and show you to fill out your grant papers to be able to go to college or grade school. And if you're in this program 2.5 years, you're gonna learn everything from against violence, decent relationships between male and female. Half of our program will be male, females in them anyway. And if we could spread this around the country, 100,000, 1 million youth in the next 10 years doing this kind of work, jobs, et cetera, boom, 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 then we've changed. And then it's community control economics and it's financially self-sufficient. We don't want any damn government in it. Get out of here with your racist, politicking ass. Leave us alone. This is a community control economic endeavor. And people rehabilitate themselves because that's a large portion of their human liberation.
Well, Bobby Seale, for you it seems the struggle always goes on.
Oh, yes.
I'd really like to thank you very much for taking some time out of that schedule and talking with us.
Thank you.
الويل للمستعمر والله فوق الغادر المتجبر